Lady has expired. Congressman Neugebauer, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, good to have you again. I want to go back to something that's really bothering me, and that is that I hear you have said on numerous occasions now that the Treasury, some of these regulators, FDIC, Federal Reserve, all of these various regulators that disagree with you on this Consumer Protection Agency. And you keep stating, well, the reason that they disagree with me is they're just trying to protect their turf.
I didn't say it quite that way. I was a little more delicate in how I said it.
I don't think
there are
yeah.
principled reasons for disagreeing about any proposal,
Yeah.
as many of you know. But
yeah. Won't you let me get to my question?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think you were a little bit more clear in that meeting with them about how you felt about. I understand that you had some remarks to make to them, but I think the question here that we have a number of people that are in regulatory positions here that are supposed to be smart people, supposed to be experienced people, supposed to know what they're doing. They're telling you that, for example, the FDIC says that these changes would be very disruptive in the agency's operations during a very critical time. The OCC says its exams conducted in integrated exams, but the CFPA could not make supervisory recommendation to banks to influence consumer compliance. And so, you know, Mr. Secretary, I get concerned that either these people are incompetent or maybe you're not right.
Well, again,
because you're saying they're wrong and you're right, but we've got 4 people, and there are others that say they think this is not a good process. And so I think we have to be very careful about if we don't have competent people in place in these agencies, because you think that they're not looking after the best interests of the country, they're looking after their turf, then that's a very serious charge.
Well, I think it's just a simple observation. And let me just say, I have great respect and work very closely with all of those people, and they are doing an excellent job under very exacting circumstances. But if you were in their shoes and if I was, be making the same basic arguments. And it's not, there is principle in those arguments. It's not an unreasonable point for them to make, but it is, you have to view it through the basic imperative that they're defending a set of traditions and authorities that they've lived with for some time they're comfortable with. But the basic, I can't say it more starkly than this. How did it work in practice? Did it do what it was designed to do? And I think there is no basis for claiming that it worked. So
well,
that's the only way I can say it, which is a simple thing. We had a chance to see how it worked over decades, and it did not do what it was designed to do. Now, it wasn't simply about how they exercised their authority, because large parts of the system were outside their authority. And that made it harder for them in that context. But that's why I think you have to look back and step back and try to do something more fundamental.
Well, I think the other question, too, is you have to determine exactly what part of this, of what happened in the past, was actually attributed to the consumer part of it. And because you're making a very radical change when we really haven't really sat down, I think, and done the proper autopsy to determine how much of the activities happen because of inadequate or lack of consumer protection.
I think it's actually kind of simple and stark, and if we understand one thing, I think we understand that. And to say it simply, where there were rules, they were weak and not enforced, but there are large parts of the system without rules. And that's not a tenable balance for any system.
I want to go back to the derivatives issue, because we've had a number of companies come and testify or come and see, I think, individual members of Congress, and very concerned about the proposals. These are companies that use these derivatives to hedge risks that they're not able to cover in other ways. And with now that even though with the exemption, many of these are going to be meet the eligibility requirements of the clearinghouses, and so they're concerned they will not be able to use the exemption. And many of them say that with that factor and having to put up large amounts of cash margins, that they will not be able to actually hedge those risks. What are you proposing to make sure that we clarify this, because it's a serious issue?
I completely agree with you, and I think you're right to point out, and they're right to point out, that There are companies that make things and sell things that people need, that need the capacity to manage their business in a way that allows them to hedge risks. And not all those things will be met, needs will be met through a simple standardized product that is traded on an exchange. So preserving that is important. But the challenge for us is to make sure that in preserving that, we don't create a huge loophole that allows all that stuff that needs oversight to migrate to where there's none. But